Hey, Sumanth, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to join us on the Company Manifestos podcast and share your story, the RudderStack story with us. Thank you very much.
Hi, Raj. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me for this thing too. Yeah, would love to share my experiences and how RudderStack works. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just to give some context, we talk about the company building process, right? And so we can go through a little bit of the key highlights that, from a RudderStack standpoint. But before that, a brief introduction about yourself, just, a quick background so that listeners have the context that'd be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working in software probably for close to 13 years. I'm a graduate in 2009. So, and I joined NetApp. Okay, it's a storage company. So I was working as a kernel programmer there for 3 years. Okay, and then I moved to another gaming company, Kiwi. So where we were building, we had a very good team, and we built close to 40, 50 games there. Okay, across 4 years. Okay, and during that journey, that's when actually that's the real startup experience that I first had. So there's a huge shift from a previous company, NetApp, where it's a big company and you have very good process, everything kind of figured out. But it's a startup where you need to go figure out things by yourself. Okay, make things, break things, and fix them fast and move fast. Okay, so that was the motto in that company. So that's where actually my startup journey started. And then after that, I actually wanted to try something on my own. So we found another company. Okay, so that's also based out of India. So we are building products out of for Silicon Valley company. So we built a crypto company, and we are mostly doing software services. Okay, and we worked on IoT. We worked on logistics companies in Indonesia, for different clients. We built a small team then. Okay, and I think I did for close to 2.5 years, and always I had this thing to build something for developers, because being a developer, I know the pain point that I generally face in my day-to-day things. So anything that is repetitive, I don't want to do. Anything that's more maintenance and I have to keep doing. So I want to automate things. So that's how I look at things. That's how you need to engineer things, right? So, and that's when software services has become very short term. I mean we do a project for 3-4 months and again move to another project, So new requirements and new things. But I mean it's no deep learning. It's more on the bread thing. So I thought, okay, I want to do more engineering focus. So that's when I got to meet Soumyadev. So I got to meet Soumyadev through a common investor. The founder at my previous gaming company is an investor at this, he's part of this company. So that's how I got to know RudderStack. So and that immediately connected with me, right? So because it's a company where we are building a product for data engineers. Okay, so this is what I wanted to do. And yeah, so that's how
Sure.
This whole journey started.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sumanth, for the brief intro. Appreciate it. So let's get started on the RudderStack story. The company was founded in 2019. You had your seed round in 2020. 2021, your Series A, and you opened offices in India and Greenville. And then now we are in 2022. Recently, you raised your Series B and 114 plus employees. Last count I saw on your website, right? So, great journey. So sort of, just, along those timelines, it'd be good to sort of, talk through this story, right? So, you started in July 2019. And so maybe we can start off with, you said the sort of pitch resonated. So maybe talk a little bit about the pitch, the RudderStack pitch, so that, we can understand it better.
Yeah. This a very exciting and insane journey, I would say. Okay, so because in June 2019, so when I think in May I first spoke with Soumyadev. Okay, so our CEO and founder. So he just came out of 8x8 and he saw some problems in this data space, right? Where building a CDP using big customers like Segment, okay, big companies like Segment. I mean, there are a lot of gaps. Okay, he could see how hard these companies how to manage their data pipelines and a bunch of things. So he had this idea, okay, let's build a company, okay, which solves the data engineering problems and makes data engineers the heroes of their organization. So that was one of our vision of the company, make data engineers heroes in their organization. Okay, so and when we started, I mean, like, so we looked at our own tools, what are there, like how we can actually help, right? So one thing that we found was like segment doing event streams, which is clearly there's a huge big gap in the market. If some company wants to do that by themselves, let's take a small company, they want to do it by themselves, I mean, so they have to figure out all the APIs and do a lot of things by themselves, and there's no open source alternative at that point. So we started off an open source alternative, and we started setting up a team. So we initially we just had like maybe 5 engineers in India. Okay, and we have like CEO in US. This was like in like June 2019. Okay, so we started like quickly iterating things. Okay, and then we hired like 3 more engineers in India. Like initial team was like 8 to 10 people. Okay, for till the end of 2019. Okay, so and that was a small team. We were like quickly iterating, so we had like huge velocity. I mean, so that's an advantage that you get in like very early stage, right? So you like at that point we had no customers, so like we built like everything end to end in probably a month. Okay, so we had like a full blown POC of the product, and like our CEO is also like very, he has a PhD, like he's also an engineer, like he built also like a major part of the product, he coded it by himself. So and quickly in 3 months we open source the product, like we found our like first customer. Okay, so and then it went from 1 to 3. By I think by end of 2010 we had like 3 to 4 customers by then, like pretty good scale. I mean, these customers, I mean, they're like maybe 5 to 10-year-old companies and have like decent volumes of data that like flowing through RudderStack. And then yeah, so at that point still, I mean, like we knew that okay, like we just want to focus on the problem. Okay, we want to solve the problem. I mean, it's not a small problem, it's something that's built over years, right? I mean, like a company like Segment has built like 8 years to have a very polished, and like that's an amazing product. Okay, so we want to get there, so like we started hiring the right people. So one advantage we had in the beginning was we got lucky with the initial team. So the initial team, I mean, the team that you would need is like people who are fine with iterating fast, like throwing out things that don't work. Okay, talk to customers. Okay, like if something breaks anytime in the day, like they just come in like, I mean, like it helps if everyone is hands-on in the beginning. So because that's how like people get motivated. Okay, so that's what we used to do. Okay, so and slowly, I think maybe mid 2020, I think like once we raised Series A, like we started growing the team as well. Okay, so then we had like teams in US. Okay, so we've started building sales team and like marketing organization, like all these things in US. And like engineering is like still primarily in India in 2020. Okay, and then at that point we actually also acquired a company out of Greece. Okay, so it's a like small team, but like very like good engineers and like who are in this domain. Like I mean, the company name is Blendo, and they built this like ETL pipelines before. Okay, so we got the team, and we also like have a presence in Greece now. We have presence in India, and we have presence in US. And slowly we started scaling more. Okay, and I mean, like we started getting more and more inbounds, and now we have like, as you said, now like fast forward, now we have like much bigger teams. I mean, we have like close to like 60 to 70 engineers. Okay, across globe. Now we have teams in Greece, US. We have engineers out of Austin, or engineers out of Bay Area, and like in India, like we have 3 offices. Other than that, like we have like product teams, marketing teams, and customer success, sales teams. Everything is in US today. Like we are also like expanding to other continents right now.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Sumanth. Just going back to the pitch a little bit,
Yeah.
right? I remember in an interview, Somidev had told that as part of his previous gig at 8x8, he realized that there was a need for a CDP for engineers, right? And so that's one used to be an early part of the RudderStack pitch is CDP for engineers versus CDP for marketers, which is what Segment and other companies were sort of focused on. So tying back to that in terms of the feedback that you mentioned, right? Early part of the iteration and stuff like that. So if you can talk a little bit about sort of how did you validate that hypothesis, right? That, basically that was Soumidev's gut that there was a need for a CDP for engineers, but you have to sort of validate that hypothesis, right? And how did you go about sort of, doing that, getting that feedback and sort of that loop, if you can talk about that from sort of your experience.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like if you look at a CDP, like what exactly does a CDP do, right? So generally, it ingests data from multiple places, and you probably like build some customer profiles inside a CDP. Okay, like you do some identity stitching and everything, and like finally, you probably want to like move this data to downstream tools. Let's say you want to update their scores on HubSpot, or let's say you want to send them ads, like you want to move them to like Facebook audience list. Like these are like 3-4 key things that the CDP does. And again, like the CDP is a very loosely used term. I mean, like a lot of things come under CDP today. Okay, but if you actually look at it, okay, so there's a lot of engineering work involved in it. Okay, so the data ingestion. So an engineer has to come in, like he needs to instrument his applications. He needs to instrument the backend services and everything to ingest the data. Once the data is ingested, like I mean, like you have this identity stitching, right? So identity stitching, like I mean, every company has their own way of identity stitching, so it becomes like slightly sophisticated, like what exactly someone is doing, and like there's a lot more process involved. And let's say you upload some of your S3 files where you have some raw data of your customers, okay, and also probably you're like getting your transactional databases data into your warehouses. Okay, you need to tell the CDP that okay, like these are my fields and all. Okay, and this is like slightly restricted by the company because that's how things have been built over time. Okay, so and finally, when you want to like, I mean, the main power that the marketer has is like, I mean, once the data, you work with engineering to ingest the data, you work with engineering to define like identity stitching, because engineers know like which who, I mean, email in a row and a phone number in a row, like how do they map to each other? These kind of things, again, like engineers know, like they also need to tell the CDP tool, like this is how you need to do identity stitching. And finally, marketers come and like they actually activate the data using the audience builder. So if you look at this workflow, I mean, like there are two major points like where engineers are like heavily involved. Okay, so and the final value is coming out for the market. Okay, so but so the way we started off is okay, so this whole thing, I mean, like instead of like running on something that is outside of your control, okay, so like third party to like kind of holding your data, and with the entry of the Snowflake and Redshift, I mean, like data warehouses become kind of the default tool in like any data organizations today, right? So we wanted to actually build this whole thing on top of the customer's data warehouse. Okay, so that's where things have started. Okay, and yeah, the way we kind of validated it is basically the first 5 or like 10 customers that we spoke to. Okay, the point of contact that we are talking to is always an engineer. Okay, because there's a data engineer like who had to build a CDP in the company, or let's say who want to like stream data to some other place. Okay, your sales team and like marketing is like going to ask you, okay, I want this data, I want they ask you like they want specific data. Okay, they need to basically work around these things. So they want a tool which can help make their life easy in terms of like these data pipelines or like maintaining the data platform. Okay, and also like building this identity stitching, like where they can have more control, because engineers can do a lot of things. We need to give them a platform. Okay, so where things are like much more flexible, they can write their own rules. Okay, they can define how their identity stitching needs to be done. Okay, so that's where like this whole ecosystem is also evolving to, right? Like if you look at DBT, okay, so people come like write their own identity stitching on top of the right data and like figure out these user profiles, okay, how they want to do things. Okay, so and going a step back, yeah, like the first 5-10 customers that we talk to are like basically engineers. So that basically validate our idea that okay, like we need data engineers. And even if you look at today, like most of our customers, I mean, almost everyone has a data warehouse. Okay, so that is becoming a like more the default tool. Even companies like 6 months old, 8 months old, they just start with the data warehouse. They have they want to make data driven decisions in this world, right? So that's how, I mean, you're going to be successful. So they have the plan of like having a data warehouse. Once you have a data warehouse, like how do you ingest data? What's the right tool for you to ingest the data? So as engineer, like you go read blogs. Okay, so you need to figure out okay how easy it is to instrument, like what kind of debuggability I have with the tool. Okay, how much control I have if I want to move away tomorrow. Okay, let's say you are in a CDP, okay, and you somehow realized okay that's not sufficient for your needs. Like moving the data is a much bigger pain. Versus as an engineer, like you know the data is in the warehouse, you know how it's there. You can write some transformations, like you move the data around. Even if you don't like RudderStack, you want to try something out. So everything is in your control. Your data is in your hands. You can do whatever you want finally.
Got it. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thanks, Sumanth. That was helpful, sort of to understand from a validation perspective how you sort of went through that journey. Continuing along in terms of culture and values, some of the principles that I saw from a RudderStack standpoint are things like transparency, open source, privacy, and security focus. Obviously, we're dealing with data, and we talked a lot about building something for engineers and data scientists, right? So that's sort of one of the principles. And then customer obsessed. So sort of how do you see that some of these principles as it maps to sort of the engineering team that you run at RudderStack, right? How do you sort of make sure that when you hire people, or in terms of running things day to day, prioritizing the requirements, whatever be it, sort of how does that map within the organization?
Yeah. So like one of the major principles that we are like basically customer centric. Okay, so customer or like user centric. It can be like open source users, or it can be our customers, but they are the ones who are giving us feedback every day, right? So they tell, okay, finally we are building something for them. Okay, so without them, like we are like basically nowhere. So I mean, like we have some processes basically like set up for this. I mean, that's also something we actually also look for when we are hiring people. So we also look at the key principles and like how well they'll culturally fit into the company, right? So we need people who are like more customer focused. Okay, so like if someone has a problem, it can be your customer can be an internal engineering team. Let's say you take an infrastructure team or a platform team. Your customer is basically like other engineering team who is basically like relying on your services. So you need to make sure like they are happy. I mean, like you need to build the right tools for them. Okay, so there are two things, like you need to build the right tools, and at the same time you need to solve them faster. Okay, so if they get a problem, you don't solve it faster. I mean, like they lose the trust in you, right? So that's how we need to build that culture. Like we need to build some trusted relationships internal to the company. Okay, so I mean, if someone asks me to do something, I mean, like they expect me to do. Okay, so these are these things which are like hard to get. I mean, so that's where like the hiring is like pretty important. So that's what like we try to look at during hiring. And in terms of when we say customer centric, right? So one thing that we do is like any issue that customer reports, we have an like internal SLA. I mean, it can be as simple thing as, okay, like some doc is like not clear. Okay, some document is not clear. So we kind of like have a process. Okay, like I mean, like you go to Slack, you click an emoji which creates an issue where the team needs to like kind of team will like immediately look into it, like they prioritize. So we even in our like daily stand-ups and sprints, like we go through all the customer reported issues. Okay, if there is something, like how can we improve it, right? So it's not just like short-term fix. I mean, like I can go fix a doc today. Okay, but I mean there could be like, I mean, if you look at RudderStack, we have like 150 like destinations that we support. So there are docs for everything. I mean, there could be a pattern where things are going like might not be right somewhere. So we look at like any customer issue in the long term. So what's the short term fix for it? Like how can we unblock them immediately? And what's the long term thing? So this long term thing will become basically ad hoc for you, right? So because you would have planned something for your quarter. Okay, okay, these are things that I'm going to work in this quarter. But the problem is, I mean, these kind of things do come up. Like you cannot control as a startup as you're growing. I mean, so we were like 5 engineers then. Like we are like close to 16 engineers right now, right? So there are like a lot of edges across all these engineers. So how do you make sure like none of these edges are like getting broken? Okay, so we need to have also the like right process. So that's a challenge that we are solving now. These are like scale problems. I mean, not just in terms of data infrastructure. Like we process close to like 70-80 billion events. Okay, so we are building the right infrastructure there. At the same time, like we have like more engineers, sales teams, okay, our marketing teams. Okay, we need to make sure like they are also being empowered. Okay, because this is like a slightly complex product. Okay, so this where like engineers are the users. I mean, so even the customer support is challenging. Okay, even basically educating users is challenging. I mean, so all these things require good amount of effort. Like we need to make sure like everyone is on the same page in terms of what we are building. Okay, so we need to like we generally train like people internally very often. Like we have weekly engineering all, and like every team that like every engineering team that they've built over like last month, they present. Okay, so and we have like 8 teams. Okay, like every week 2 teams go and present them. Okay, the product team, marketing come in, like join and like they give feedback on like how that feature is, like how that can be helpful to customers. A bunch of things there.
Sure.
Yeah, just one more thing. So even like our during quarter planning, so like we have a bunch of things that the engineering wants to do because we want to scale things, we want to improve things for customers and all, and the product team has a bunch of things, and also customer success and sales team are like more are the first phase for the customers, right? So they also give feedback. We also kind of incorporate like all these things and kind of prioritize them to basically what we're going to pick next quarter.
Sure, sure. Thank you. I think that's helpful. One of the challenges you talked about, I'm sort of trying to map it to your earlier experience. You said when you were at NetApp initially, you had the processes, everything was set, you just sort of execute to that. Versus in a startup, you're trying to build the process right as you go along. And so I think the challenge here is you want to have some process, like you mentioned about SLAs and things like that, but at the same time, you don't want too much process, right? We used to call it just enough
Exactly.
process during my time at Data Domain, where Samide was also, part of. So I think that I believe is part of the challenge, right? Having just enough process to move things along.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So in terms of we talked about building the team. You said you've grown the team over a period of time. You started with 5 in 2019, and now in 2022, early 2022, we are like 50 to 60 in terms of the engineering team size. Phenomenal growth, 10x. So great job over the period of time. So in terms of things like alignment as a team and so forth, you talked about these forums where the stand-ups and other ways where you sort of get the team aligned. In terms of generally things like hiring, you talked about you look for people with the customer obsession and so forth. So can you just trying to have a little bit more of examples, like for example, how do you test for during an interview? Obviously, I don't want to give away your sort of trade secrets or whatever process for hiring, but generally, any thoughts around what signals you look for when you sort of build the team, right? In terms of looking for people.
Yeah. So basically, so we have some like in the interviews, right? Like we have as you go further, like initial rounds will be more on like problem solving and like how good like your engineering background, like how will you write tests, documentation, bunch of things. At the same time, as you go further, like we also evaluate people. I mean, we also talk to people around the kind of things that they've done in their previous company. Okay, so where you show some kind of your bias towards action, right? So I mean, you could be at a place where if you don't do something, yeah, it's fine, but you clearly see a pain point for a customer or probably another engineer. Okay, so where you work with them, talk to them, like write it down, like figure out a problem and like give up a solution, right? So we try to ask them if they can actually give us some examples of such things where they have taken extra initiative to do things.
Sure.
I mean, like it's fine. I mean, like there could be like people who, introverts, they might not want to talk to people. They might want to like even they're like they're general write better. So we have that like great mix of our team, like where people don't talk, they just code, and there are people like who kind of make sure like they align everyone and like get things going forward, right? So yeah, we ask some questions around like are there any things where you didn't have to do anything, but you did it because like you saw the pen, you saw the like bigger thing, right? So and as you're scaling, that becomes much bigger challenge, because initial people, it's clear. I mean, like you talk to customers daily, you know what's happening across the company, like you get more connected. So as you're scaling, like you might be part of a team, and that's where we are trying to solve a lot of problems there. Like you might not know. Uh, it's a challenge if you don't really know okay what's happening in the other team. You might not be happy. Okay, you might feel a small player in this big game. So that's not what we want to do. So that's where like we have like every 2 weeks we have a company all hands. We are very transparent, and like everyone in the company kind of knows okay who our customers are, like what's the revenue, like what's the percentage at which we are growing, whom we are hiring, why we are rejecting someone. Okay, and people come up with suggestions. You cannot use this bias to, let's say, like reject people, right? So we openly discuss like why we think it's a fair thing that we have to do at this point. Probably maybe in future, like maybe 1 year down the line, we might be okay with that, but right now we need people with this mindset, and like this is the focus. So that's where like this whole transparency also comes into the picture. Yeah.
Sure. No, I think that's really helpful that, how the transparency sort of helps other aspects aspects of functioning effectively as a team. Yeah, great insight. Thank you. Thanks, Sumanth. Sort of moving along in terms of how you make and operate things. Let's start with first the make piece. Obviously, you also provide a service, so there's also the operational side of things. But from a sort of how you build your software and so forth slash service, are there areas that sort of you sort of focus on as a team to say, okay, these are sort of things that we agree, more of a for lack of a better term, an engineering manifesto, right? Where you say, okay, this is how we're going to pick programming languages, or this is how we're going to deploy code, or coding standards, whatever, right? So at this stage of the journey, sort of what are some of the areas that as an engineering team sort of you're focused on, if you can sort of briefly talk about that.
Yeah. So exactly. This is an important thing, right? So like having kind of a manifesto or like using strategy so that like everyone is aligned on it. Okay. So you don't. Everyone needs. You don't have to convince people on like every decision. A decision can be made at like every level, right? So that is more important. So we have a manifesto, but I wouldn't say like we've put like a lot of effort in like making it much like reach the wider engineering team or like figuring out things there. That's in process. Like you always work on things, and like some things. These are important things which get deprioritized. Okay, versus there are like urgent things. Like maybe there's a customer waiting for a new feature. That's like the set of things that we want to do this quarter. Okay, so these kind of things we actually tend towards. Okay, so that's what even I'm learning and like trying to figure out. Okay, basically I've written a manifesto probably a year back. Okay, so why we use only 2 programming languages, say with Go and JavaScript. Why we don't want to use more languages, and like how we want to do code reviews. Okay, and how we want to like write documents, right? So as we are growing, these are like very big systems. Where you handle huge amounts of data. Okay, so if you don't design something well, like things might break, but it's make sure we need to make sure, okay, we at least have the like right monitoring in place. Okay, and also the code reviews are pretty important. Like engineers need to spend enough time on the code reviews. So that's how like engineering is growing. Okay, that's how he's learning, right? So do good code reviews, write good tests, like good documentation, a bunch of things that we need to do. At the same time, like the business is like growing faster than we thought. Okay, so we also need to make sure like we are at that same velocity. Okay, we are basically serving our customer needs also. Manifest is a very important thing. So right now, one advantage we had was, so the leadership team, okay, so was from the initial stage. So even though we have not written down somewhere, okay, we all know, okay, like we are kind of like connected through our thoughts, right? So this is what we want to do. Even the next set of leadership, that team that we hired, okay, so as we are growing, it also like managing teams, right? Like managing bigger teams, managing process, making sure everyone is doing well, and like they have their own growth plan in the company. There are a lot of things other than like just doing work. Okay, so and we hired some seniors, okay, like who have done this before in their previous company. So we are working with them, like figuring out what's the right way to basically get it to all the people. Given that like these seniors also, like some people who I've worked with before, like some really smart folks, right? So it's easy to like tell them, okay, this is what we are looking at as a company. We have like our company culture doc, we have a basic engineering manifesto doc, so how we want to build things, right? So but it's something every company needs to do at this stage, and we are at the stage where we need to like put more focus on that, and like we are actually doing it right now.
Great to hear that. Thank you. Thanks. And so I guess the sort of other aspect of operating things, as I said, you're also provide that as a service, cloud service. Any areas that you sort of focus on, things like growth forecasting, scale planning. How do you do that? Or areas of the operational side of things that you're focusing on. Monitoring, you talked about monitoring, obviously. One aspect of operating things. Are there other areas that sort of that you would like to talk briefly about?
Got it. So in terms of operating, right? So we initially started as like enterprise first company. So we have a deployment model where we have like per customer deployments, make sure like no one like crosses line with another and all. Okay, so and with this thing, with more and more customers, it's also becomes like very operation heavy, right? So you need to like you will probably have like thousands of pods like that are running in production per customer, and you need to basically deploy things everywhere. You need to make sure like all things are working well. If you want to look at some metrics, you probably like go check that customer has reported issue, go look at things there, right? So yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of things that we do in terms of operations also today. Okay, and but like one key principle that we have is like we want to find an issue before a customer finds. Okay, so we have alerts set up everywhere. Okay, like something getting, let's say CP getting throttled, or let's say some event delivery has gone down. Okay, like some percentage of events are not going through. Okay, there are some errors happening on for a specific customer, so we get alerted immediately. Okay, and the team kind of like any alert, like we jump onto it, we look at the issue, figure it out, and like we are very transparent there. Okay, so even if the customer doesn't notice, okay, like the service went down for like let's say 5 minutes and the customer did not notice, we go tell the customer like this is what happened. We write an outage report, share with them. Okay, so and tell them, okay, this is what has happened. Okay, and generally customers are like very what do you say, like very accepting. Okay, so basically they understand, like I mean any company, these things happen once in a while, right? So yeah, but yeah, alerting and monitoring is like kind of the core that we start with. Okay, so from day one, I think we had like a lot of alerts. I mean, at times we used to get a lot more alerts. Okay, so just because we wanted to be sure, I mean, like customer never has a breaking experience, we have like a lot more alerts coming to us. Now slowly we have active focus on getting these alerts to be like more sane numbers, because I mean if you're an engineer, you get calls like throughout the day, you'll stop responding to the calls, and like you actually miss out like important alerts, right? So that's a thing like we figured out like across the teams, and like we got to them to like very good numbers. Okay, per team, like you cannot have like more than 7 alerts every week. Okay, I mean outages are separate. I mean like they happen like maybe like once in quarter, like once in 2 quarters, but these kind of alerts like should be like much more manageable, like should be same. So that is one thing that we do. Okay, and in terms of growth forecasting and all, okay, so we as a company, we are like trying to solve most of the problems for engineers, right? So operations is becoming heavier. Okay, because like with more customers coming in, like figuring out, answering all the questions for customers, like customers have like different viewpoints of like using a feature. Like we need to make sure things are right, like write documents for them, do a bunch of things there. Okay, so we are basically hiring there. Okay, so I like basically in terms of basically setting up teams and all these things, so I follow this book. Okay, so this is like basically suggested by like one of our and also like we internally have this book called Elegant Puzzle. Okay, so by like Will Larson, Systems of Engineering Management. So I basically, I mean, like we use some principles, guiding principles from there, like we basically in setting up teams and like figuring out things. Okay, and even internally we also use what do you like Plate HQ, if you don't know, like basically it's a mentorship platform for like engineering leadership. So we also have like all engineering leaders kind of talking to other engineering leaders in the industry, like figuring out, because like we are just growing, we are learning everything on the day, so we need to make sure we are doing the right things in the long run. So that's what we are doing even internally today. And in terms of forecasting, I think so the book I mentioned, okay, so that kind of like gives you like some very key insight, like how many members you should have in a team, so that on-call rotation is like manageable, and make sure people have enough bandwidth and time to basically focus on those things, right? So they talk about like having 8 members in a team, and like how do you set up new teams, like instead of like setting up like a completely different new team, like have some people from the existing teams also move there. Okay, so that your values and the way you think about the company, the way you think about the product, the learnings that you have can be moved into the new product instead of like starting from scratch. Okay, few things that we also like working on that stuff. And yeah, in terms of forecasting, what we do is basically like we need to make sure like all these teams are, earlier we had like 3-4 member teams, right? So 3-4 member teams, like people being on call, like figuring out all these things. Like we are basically like expanding teams. Okay, so make sure like every team has like good bandwidth to actually innovate. I mean, if you are always fixing things, you cannot innovate. So we are actually like many teams actually moved to that stage, like we got hold of things at scale. Okay, and now we are actually looking at the next set of problems today.
Great to hear that, Sumanth. Thank you. Thanks for sort of going through the RudderStack journey. I know you're still in the growth phase of adoption and the company building. Wanted to take this opportunity to wish you and the RudderStack team the very best in your journey, building it out further and being successful in the market. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
Raj. Thank you very much for your time too. Yeah.
Thanks.